All right, round two. Let's give it another go. And today, let's talk about the time that I got ripped off by an Estonian pop band. So, about 10 years ago, and it's weird to say that it was 10 years ago, but it was, I lived in Europe for about half a year. Now, I'm making it sound a lot fancier and cooler than it was. I studied abroad for a semester and some change in Europe. That's really what it was. And I went to a college where that was pretty commonplace. So this wasn't a spectacular experience that I had that no one else at this college was even having. This is a very common experience to go to this country and study in Europe for a semester. It's actually baked into the program for the college. So I was one of a few hundred students that was doing this. But it still was a very cool time to be able to say that I lived in Europe for a time. And it's very culturally very different from the United States. And I think I learned a lot about the world and myself. So if you can afford it, it's definitely an experience worth having. Now, how did I find myself getting ripped off by an Estonian pop band? Well, I was actually on the street in the town that I was studying in, walking around by myself, just hanging out, enjoying the day. And I see this van roll up and about 5 dudes pop out. And they asked me a question, which if you are by yourself and an American in Europe or any country in the world that is not America, this is a very dangerous question, which they just asked me, hey, are you American? That question, that question made me very immediately nervous because I think Americans probably have a reputation around the world as tourists that are very gullible, very easy to take advantage of. And it was obvious that I was alone. So it seemed like a question that was more of, hey, are you an easy target for whatever this thing I'm about to do to you is? So as much as I didn't like to answer that question, it was also painfully obvious that I was an American, especially as soon as I opened my mouth. So sure enough, I said, all right, yeah, I am an American. What's up? What do you want? And they said, hey, we're from Estonia. We're a traveling band. We're on tour right now, and we're just trying to sell some CDs for some quick money while we're going from place to place. So we wanted to know if you wanted to buy one. And it seemed legit. Actually, getting a better look at the people that were around me, it wasn't this like intimidating group of guys. It was just they looked like musicians. All right, like in maybe a derogatory, but also a very obvious kind of way, an endearing way that, yeah, these guys looked like they made pop music. So I said, why not? How much? And he said, what do you got? Now, I did have bills. I had plenty of 10 euro bills, 20 euro bills in my wallet. I wasn't going to do that. I didn't want to show these guys how much money I had. So I did, I think the next best thing was, and I just went through my coat pocket and I found that I had maybe 6 or 7 euros in coins. And that's what I gave him. I said, look, this is all I've got. Is this enough? And he said, yeah, sure. So he handed me the CD, and I'm going to try to find a picture of the CD that I got. I don't mind riffing on these guys because it's going to kind of turn over at the end. And the album cover was actually kind of cool. It's the kind of style that I would have been into at the time, and even now. So it made me a lot more interested, and I said, all right, cool, later. And they kind of went on their way. I don't even know if they actually stopped, got out and went around. I think they might have just kept on driving. I don't know. I think they saw oh, there's an obvious American on the side of the road. Let's get him real quick, and then we can keep going for gas or petrol, whatever they call it. I don't remember if they actually stayed or left, but I did. I left, and I went back to some of my friends, and I said, guys, I just found a cool once-in-a-lifetime CD from this guy called Tuza, and I think it's going to be awesome. So we got to find a CD player and listen to this and see if it's cool. Now, that part was more difficult than we anticipated. We had only brought minimal equipment across the pond. So finding someone with a laptop that had a CD player was a bit of a process. And by the time we had quite a few people that were interested in listening to this crazy Estonian pop CD. And some of the tracks had very cool names. I remember specifically there was a track called Daniel Fooled a Bear, and I was very excited to listen to that. So it ended up being a few of us that got around to listen to this music, very excited to listen to it. And it was all very, very amateur instrumental electronic tracks with no vocals, no resounding production. It was not very good at the time. At the time, we were all very disappointed and incredibly frustrated and annoyed that I had gone out of 6 euro, which doesn't sound like a lot, but when you're a broke college student, you know, that's a meal, you know, or that's a few drinks at the pub. Now, I have since listened to the CD, and I actually really like it. I've kind of grown into enjoying that style of music far more than when I did 10 years ago. So it's ended up being kind of a long-term investment, well worth it. The ROI that I got is insane. I don't think I could find anyone else on the planet that owns that CD, and I still have it somewhere. I don't know where it is, but I'd like to find it soon to show it off. Plus, as an older man, I have a far greater appreciation for smaller musicians and supporting small and local musicians. So, Tuza, if any of you are listening, I'm glad I bought the CD. I'm glad I could support you. Overall, even though I was kind of frustrated at the time that this had happened, it's also ended up being an insanely cool story. And having a really cool memento like that and a story for $6, you can't really beat that. It seems like to me, disappointment that you find in your life, big or small, might just be about place and time. I think if you're just having a certain day, things might disappoint you where they wouldn't on a regular day, or you'd just be able to laugh about it. And there's plenty of disappointments that you could get over later, such as the disappointment of me losing this race again. But I think I'm gonna keep trying. I'm just gonna keep trying to win these races, and I hope you stick around for that. And maybe after all this disappointment is over, we can all have a good laugh about it, right? Hopefully.